On 17th of May 2008, the police stopped two girls. They were walking along a motorway on the outskirts of London. A policeman was calmly questioning the girls when something happened that was hard to believe, even when you saw it with your own eyes. First the first girl and then the second threw themselves sharply under the wheels of passing cars at high speed. It seems unbelievable, but both girls survived. However, there were much stranger things to come after this incident. Sabine and Ursula Eriksson were born in Sweden on 3rd November 1967. They had one older sister and one brother. The girls' childhood and adolescence passed in a normal way. Nothing strange happened in their lives. In time, Sabina got married and gave birth to two children. In 2000, the girls left their native Sweden. Ursula went to work in the United States, and Sabine moved with her husband and children to a small town in Ireland. It was 8 long years before the girls met again. On 15th of May 2008, Ursula flew to Ireland to visit her sister, but instead of a quiet family reunion, the girls decided, for reasons only they knew, to go to England. And so, at 2 a.m. on 16th May, they boarded the ferry to Liverpool. On arrival in Liverpool, the sisters immediately went in search of a police station. It is important to remember that Sabina had a husband and two children who remained in Ireland, and it is likely that they were not even aware at this stage that Sabina had left home. At around 8:30 a.m., the girls finally managed to get to the police station. At the station, Sabina claimed that her children were in danger and asked the police for help. What prevented them from contacting police officers in Ireland remains a mystery. The sisters' story was very inarticulate and rambling, but the police officers could not ignore the claim of child endangerment. No help was forthcoming from England either. The police contacted their Irish counterparts, and it emerged that there had been a major family row at Sabina's house last night, with loud shouting and even a small scuffle between Sabina and her husband. Neighbors called the police and the argument died down, but no one knows what happened in the house after the police left. Not wanting to get involved in a domestic dispute, the Liverpool police officers assumed that Sabina was just trying to get back at her husband for the night's argument and did not take her concerns seriously. They assured Sabina that her children were fine and the girls left the station. However, contrary to expectations, they did not go home to Ireland. At 11:30 a.m., the girls boarded a bus for London. Each of them was carrying a large bag. Normally, such bags are not allowed on the bus, but the girls were so eager to keep them out of the luggage compartment that the driver was forced to allow them to take them on. Even then, the driver found this behavior strange, and on the way, he began to watch the girls. On the way, they looked very excited, kept talking in whispers, and would not let go of their huge bags. This behavior and excessive attention to their luggage seemed too suspicious to the bus driver. At the next stop, the driver asked the sisters to present their luggage for inspection, but they refused. The driver informed the manager of the bus company. The safety of the other passengers was more important, so the manager decided to refuse the girls further transport. In addition, this extra attention to their luggage suggested that the girls might be planning some kind of crime, so the manager called the police to search the girls' luggage. The call turned out to be false, as nothing illegal was found in the sisters' bags. Odd behavior in itself is not a crime, so the girls were apologized to and released. They could have waited calmly for the next bus, but their inexplicable desire to get to London was stronger than that. At 15:20, cameras captured two girls with luggage walking towards London on the M6 motorway's slip road. Walking on foot along the motorway is prohibited, so a patrol was sent to the girls to stop the offense. Coincidentally, in the car with the patrol men were journalists who were filming a program about the everyday life of police officers for the BBC. While the patrolmen were traveling to the place of violation, something inexplicable happened. First the first and then the second girl suddenly jumped out on the road. The situation was getting really dangerous. Nothing was known about how much the girls were hurt, and the police were preparing for the worst. However, as it turned out, they were almost unhurt, looked calm, and were talking to one of the patrolmen who had arrived earlier. Journalists filmed the officer explaining the incident on camera, and suddenly something hard to believe happened. One of the sisters, Ursula, abruptly threw her bag on the pavement and threw herself onto the road, where a heavy lorry was just passing by. The reaction of the patrolman who tried to stop her was not enough. The woman did not want to be rescued, but decided to die by all means. While everyone was in shock at what they saw, Sabina just as suddenly also threw herself under the wheels of one of the cars. It was hard to believe what they saw, but to the surprise of eyewitnesses, despite such a desperate attempt to die, both girls were alive. The police officers tried to calm the girls down. Ursula was behaving very aggressively, but because she had broken her leg, she was unable to move actively. Sabine was less injured than her sister, and while the police were waiting for an ambulance, she shouted, "I recognized you. You're not real. You want to steal my organs." She then jumped to her feet and started calling for the police, even though there were already police officers around her trying to keep her alive. Suddenly, she hit the female officer with such force that she even fell to the ground. Although she was much taller, Sabina continued her suicide attempt. She ran to the opposite side of the road and desperately tried to fight off the policeman. She did this with such fervor that it took 5 men to restrain her. All this, mind you, after she had been hit by a car. Then the ambulance arrived. The girls were given sedatives and taken to hospital. Ursula was seriously injured and needed surgery, so she stayed in the clinic. As for Sabina, the doctors found no serious injuries, and she was handed over to the police. The story of what had happened on the motorway had already gone viral. At this point, the policeman who took her from the clinic expected to see a real monster. But to their surprise, they found a fragile, modest girl. She was absolutely calm and showed no aggression. The police did not even handcuff her. When she arrived at the station, Sabina was very friendly. She smiled, joked, and even flirted with the police officer. When asked what had happened on the motorway, she either did not answer or said that she did not remember anything, even though it was only a few hours ago. She was also unable to explain why she and her sister had traveled to England and why they needed to go to London. No traces of drugs or alcohol were found in the girls' blood, and they had no history of mental illness, adding to the strangeness of their recent behavior. The police contacted Sabina's husband. His response stunned them. He had no idea where his wife was and was completely unconcerned that she was in trouble with the law. On the morning of 19th of May 2008, Sabine Eriksson's trial took place. The woman was found competent, and the defendant pleaded guilty to assaulting a police officer and causing an accident on the road. The sentence was a fine and 1 day in prison, which she has already served in custody. Sabine Eriksson was released, forgetting that a few days earlier she had deliberately thrown herself under the wheels of a car and attacked police officers. Although no one ever understood what had happened to her on the road, everyone assumed that the condition was irreversible and that she was no longer a danger to others. But such thoughtlessness would be a big mistake for the police. Instead of going home to her husband and children, Sabina wandered the streets of London. She wandered into a park where she met 2 locals, Glenn Hollinhead and his friend Peter Malloy. They struck up a conversation, and Sabina told them that her sister was in hospital and she had nowhere to stay. Glenn proved to be a sympathetic man and offered to let Sabina stay with him for a few days. He also assured her that he would help her find her sister. All 3 went to Glenn's house. At first, they just talked and drank beer. Sabina looked very upset and kept talking about her sister. She sat in her chair and jumped up and down, running to the window and trying to see something in the streets of London at night. It was as if she was afraid of something, but she never explained what she was afraid of. Soon her behavior started to look paranoid. She refused to eat or drink, offered men her cigarettes, and then knocked them out of her mouth, claiming they might be poisoned. Peter developed worrying feelings about this girl. He suspected she was hiding from someone, but Glenn assured him that everything would be all right and nothing terrible would happen if she stayed the night. Just before midnight, Peter got tired of the girl's strange behavior and went home. The next day, Glenn phoned his brother, Paul, who worked at a hospital in London and could help find Sabine's sister. It took some time to find Ursula, so Sabina stayed with Glenn. At 7:40 p.m., Glenn went to a neighbor's house to ask for some tea bags. When he got what he wanted, he went home, but a minute later he was back at his neighbor's house, holding his throat and bleeding. He only managed to ask the neighbor to look after his dog before collapsing on the floor. At the same time, security cameras caught Sabine Eriksson running away from Glenn Hollinshead's house with a large hammer in her hand. She ran down the street and hit herself on the head with the hammer. A passerby spotted her and tried to stop her, but once again Sabina showed inhuman agility. She took a stone from her pocket and hit the unfortunate man, knocking him to the ground. By this time, the ambulance had arrived, and although it is not usually the job of ambulance staff to chase crazy people, the paramedics rushed to Sabina's side to pull her to the ground. This proved to be no easy task, and the chase lasted several minutes. It became clear that the woman was heading towards a multi-story junction that towered 12 meters above the road. When she reached her destination, the girl leapt onto the railing of the bridge and, without a second's hesitation, jumped down from the 12-meter height. It seems unbelievable, but this time Sabine survived. She was admitted to hospital and began to behave normally. Her aggression, delusions, and paranoia had disappeared. Either she really did not remember her actions or she had masterfully concealed them. On 6th June 2008, Sabine Eriksson had her first hearing. The motive for her actions was a complete mystery to both the prosecution and the defense. Both sides quickly agreed that despite the psychiatrist's verdict on the defendant's current sanity, she was not herself at the time of the crime. In the autumn of 2009, a British court found Sabine Eriksson guilty of manslaughter in the death of Glenn Hollinshead. The woman pleaded guilty, but claimed not to remember anything. The judge described Sabina Eriksson's case as the most difficult in his practice and said that her culpability was very low because she was not aware of her actions. A mental illness known as madness in pairs was cited as the cause of all the sisters' actions. This is a rare form of psychosis in which hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia are transmitted between two people and then disappears. Sabine Eriksson was only sentenced to 5 years in prison. It is believed that Ursula was the first victim of the madness of two, and that Sabine contracted the madness from her, causing the woman to start hearing non-existent voices telling her to do strange things and suffering from false judgments that she believed to be true. The case of the Eriksson sisters is seen as a case where there was nothing the accused could have done to avoid the consequences. The deceased's brother, Glenn Hollinshead, was unhappy with the police for quietly releasing the girl from the police station after the incident on the motorway. He accused the police of being insensitive to her condition, which later led to his brother's death. In September 2009, Sabina was sent to Bronzefield Women's Basic Prison, where she was held for only 439 days. She was then released under an amnesty for good behavior. Throughout her time in prison, there were no signs of mental illness. As for her sister Ursula, she underwent surgery after the motorway incident and spent 3 months in a psychiatric hospital before returning to the US. Interestingly, the sister's older brother still disagrees with the court's verdict. He believes that Ursula and Sabina acted deliberately and were not subject to a temporary lapse in judgment in May 2008. He is convinced that the girls were in real danger, hiding from a real persecutor who had driven them to the point of suicide. No one has been able to confirm his words, and to this day, the story of the strange madness of the twin sisters Ursula and Sabine Eriksson remains a great mystery.